5 years ago, I took my very last sip of alcohol. I had no idea at the time that it was going to be my last sip of alcohol. I didn't know what my final night of drinking had in store for me. I didn't know if it would be an unsuccessful break or attempt to quit alcohol like it had been several times before. And I certainly didn't know that giving up one thing would 5 years later lead me to be living the most beautiful, wonderful, alcohol-free life that I could ever imagine. Quitting alcohol, getting sober was the best thing that I could have ever done for myself. And today I'm going to be talking all about the journey to get here, the multiple attempts to quit drinking, the breaks that probably should have been a sign that I should have quit for good, the things that sobriety has taught me, and how I did it, and how I've stayed sober, and what life is like now that I have given up one thing but gained literally everything else. Today, we're going to go through the journey and talk about where we're at now. So, what was life like back when I was drinking? Well, I was pretty chaotic, to say the least. I started drinking between my 6th and 7th grade summers, so I was way too young. But I had always been just immersed in it. Drinking was what the people I was surrounded by did for fun. I literally never even questioned if I was going to drink when I grew up. I never even thought about what other hobbies and things to do for fun were, because I just saw that modeled to me and decided that was what I was going to do. I was always what I would consider the closeted rebel. I would always get great grades. I was a very nice person. I got along with everybody. I stayed out of drama for the most part. And all of my friends' parents loved me because they thought I was a good influence. Never would they think that I would be the one who was pressuring their precious son or daughter into drinking. But alas, I was. So I started drinking way too young. I never saw a future without alcohol. And that continued all throughout middle school and high school. And then college came around and it didn't stop. It only got worse. At the worst of it, I would be going out probably 5 days a week, almost every single week. Still somehow making it on time to my 8 a.m. classes, still somehow managing to stay alive, even though I blacked out most nights that I would drink. I would tell myself, oh, I'm just going to stick to beer tonight. I'm only going to drink vodka. I'm only going to drink in the pregame. I'm not going to drink at the bar. And I would tell myself all of these different stories and still somehow wake up in places with zero recollection of how I got there and zero recollection of what happened and what I said or who I hurt or who I impacted the night before. But I told myself that it was okay because I was getting good grades. I secured a good internship. I was a nice person. I didn't have to worry about it. It was just, that was college. That was just what you did. It was normal to be blacking out. It was normal to have your only idea of fun being alcohol and partying. And when I look back at it, the biggest reason why I drank alcohol was because I was filled with so much shame. I had no self-worth. I didn't have any sort of connection to God. I didn't know what I wanted out of myself. I didn't know what I valued. I was just lost. So I can tell you these stories and talk about what I was like back in those days with zero shame because it just is a testimony to how you're never too far gone and how much God can do in your life. Who I was 5 years ago, who I was 10 years ago is nowhere near the woman that I am today. And it was a long journey to get there, but I made it out. And I never thought I would. Spent my entire college drinking. I do not remember most of my college years. I was blacked out for almost my entire college experience. And it felt fine to me because that was what I thought college was. And then I told myself, once I graduate, it'll be fine. It'll all be different. Well, I bet you can guess it was not. The first time that I really started to change and started to question my relationship with alcohol was, and it wasn't only alcohol too. There were some hard drugs that I got mixed in with. Never purchasing them myself though, so it was fine because I was using other people's. But then there's one day that absolutely transformed everything, and it's not when I got sober, but it is a very pivotal point in my life, and that is when I found God. And when I found God, I was coming down from a high. I had been day drinking all day at a game day. Even though I had graduated, I had made my way back to campus, doing the same old shenanigans that I got involved in back when I was in school. I got back to my apartment by myself. My phone died. I was locked out of my apartment and I was crying over a boy that did not like me because I did not like myself. And I just remember sitting outside of my apartment while I was waiting for the maintenance people to come to let me in. And it was the first time that I was forced to be alone with my thoughts. My cell phone was dead, so I couldn't be scrolling or distracting myself in that way. So I literally just had to think. And I started to ask myself, do I like who I've been? Is this who I want to be? I'm out of college now. I told myself that this was going to stop once I graduated, and I haven't slowed down at all. If anything, I've gotten worse. And I started to think about, like, what do I want out of my life? Is this who I am? What do I even stand for? What do I value? What even do I have as hobbies or anything outside of partying? And I just got really real with myself that I knew I needed to change. I knew I needed help, and something in me just stirred. I felt this really strong pull to pray to God. I didn't have a relationship with God at this point. I just was like, you know what, God, if you're real, I really need you right now. And nothing big happened. There were no earthquakes. There was no earth-shattering moments. It was just maintenance came in, they let me into my apartment, went to bed, woke up the next morning, and I just felt this inexplicable peace that I had no business feeling. And from that point on, I decided, you know what? I'm going to give this God thing a shot. I'm going to see what it's like to develop a relationship with God. And I did. And that absolutely changed my life. And that was absolutely the catalyst for the many, many years after that of attempting to go on this sobriety journey. But that's where it all started. I met God coming down from a high, locked outside of my apartment with my phone dead. And it is so cool to think that that one prayer that I prayed literally changed the trajectory of my entire life. Now, I so badly wish that I could tell you that after that moment, I found God and I decided to quit drinking and I turned my life around just like that. Well, unfortunately, that's not what happened. I did, however, start to read some self-help books, You Are a Badass by Jen Sincero, and the Bible, obviously. So I started going to church. I started to get more involved in my faith. I started to pray and develop a really deep relationship with God. I became a certified yoga instructor. I did so many things, all while continuing the pattern of drinking heavily and blacking out. And one of the worst things I think about me in my drinking days was the lack of self-worth that I had in the way that I let men treat me and the way that I would beg for a crumb of attention from someone who clearly didn't like me all that much because I didn't really like myself. And no wonder why I turned to alcohol, because I was feeling all of these really hard emotions. I had no way of processing them. I had no way of learning where my worth came from. I just was doing what I knew how to do. And I remember there were so many breaks that I took from alcohol. I made a blog post the year after I graduated college that was just celebrating the fact that I didn't drink for 30 days because that was how drastic of a change it was. I literally had probably not gone a week without alcohol my entire college existence, maybe once or twice, like not even an exaggeration. That is how ingrained alcohol was into my life. And I remember writing this blog post about how excited I was that I went, I think it was 28 days without alcohol. And you know how I celebrated? Double fisting some 2-for-1 drinks at my local happy hour. So safe to say that I didn't quite learn my lesson. I told myself, hey, if I can quit drinking for 28 days, I'm not an alcoholic. It's fine. I don't have a problem. Don't worry. Then the blackouts continued. And I started getting more and more uncomfortable with it because there were so many times where I put myself in such unsafe situations that I would wake up the next morning and be like, thank you, God. Thank you for keeping me alive. And it just got to a point where honestly, I got sick of my own shit. I was like, are we going to keep doing this? Are we really going to keep doing this? I was just so broken and I was so lost. And all of that time spent with God was starting to get to me. It was like, whoa, I'm reading these things in the Bible that just don't align with what I'm doing in my life. And this is just not who I want to be. It's not who I want to be. So I would pray about it. I would say, God, help me with this. And I would take these breaks. I would set all these rules where it would try to help me from blacking out, try to prevent me from drinking too much. And I would fail a lot. I would quit and I would start again. I can't even tell you how many times I told myself I was going to quit drinking only to start drinking again. And I think I knew I had a problem. I just didn't want to face it. And I just didn't know how to face it. And it got better. It really did. So 2017 was when I found God. I would say after that, life slowly got better. And in 2019, I decided, you know what? I'm going to move myself out of this environment where I'm constantly blacking out because it's just not good for me. I can't heal in the environment that I've always been in. So I up and left. I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I knew not a single soul. I immersed myself in 2 different Bible studies. I tried to do everything I could but drink. And it worked for the most part. I did not drink a ton my years in Charlotte. I would not do it very frequently. However, when I would drink, I still would end up blacking out. It was just the same old story of I was doing all this work, I was growing, I was learning, I was becoming a better person, but I just couldn't kick it. I could not fix my relationship to alcohol no matter how hard I tried. And there were points when I would be drinking at home by myself during COVID. Wouldn't be drinking to excess like I did when I went out, but do I really need to be drinking alone and isolating myself from people? Did I really need to, every single time I did go out, drink to the point where I'd black out and not remember it? And in 2021, I think I literally only drank 2 times. I think I drank once in February, completely blacked out, ended up doing drugs, not a good version of myself. And then I told myself, not going to drink again. Nope, taking a break. Then in June 18th, the last time I ever drank, I went off the deep end. So let's get into it, shall we? Let's talk about the last time I ever drank. So the last time I ever drank alcohol was June 18th, 2021. I was not planning on going out this night, but one of my neighbors texted me. I was like, you know what? I've been bored. I haven't really been seeing people enough. I should just do it. I need to be more social. So I did. Started the night with some mezcal, not good. Told myself I was going to take it easy and just be casual. Well, you can imagine that probably didn't go that way. The pieces of the night that I remember that I was going to leave with my neighbors, but I saw them outside, like waiting for the Uber, and I tried to get out the doors, but they were locked because they only had a bouncer at one of the doors. So I'm seeing them, I'm like, oh, I should go home with them. And I'm trying to leave, but the door won't open. Well, since this door was locked and I can't get out to my neighbors to go home, I decided let's make a night out of it. Let's go wild, let's go crazy. And go crazy is exactly what I did. I somehow managed to end up in the men's bathroom with someone I just met that night doing drugs. I remember strutting right into that men's bathroom like I wasn't doing anything wrong. And then when all the shenanigans were done and I was ready to go home, I decided to walk home at 2 o'clock in the morning through the city by myself. Yeah. So not only did I decide to walk home, but I had moved and I was walking to my old apartment, which is in the complete opposite direction of the city. If you're familiar with the Charlotte area, I was in Uptown. I started walking to South End, even though I lived in Plaza Midwood. Not safe areas for me to be walking in at 2 o'clock in the morning by myself when I was hammered. I FaceTimed one of my neighbors and was talking to him. He asked me if he could pick me up because he hadn't been drinking. And I was like, no, I've got this. So I literally wouldn't tell him where I was, wouldn't let him pick me up. He told me that I was literally walking across the street, stopping traffic with my hands, just going across the street. Someone stopped and told me that they had a sister, so they wouldn't want their sister out walking by themselves, and they wanted to give me a ride home. And I hopped in the car with an absolute stranger. And somehow, by the grace of God, I did make it home. And when I got home, I found my apartment unlocked and a man in my bed. Luckily, the man was friends with my neighbor, but my dog, he just let him in. He was sleeping underneath the bed. But yeah, there's so many strikes. Doing drugs with someone that I'd never met. Walking home completely alone in the middle of the night. Getting in a car with a random stranger. Leaving my apartment unlocked. I just exposed myself to so much danger that I decided that was it. It had to be it. That was not in alignment with my values. That was not who I was as a person. At that point, I had a really good relationship with God. I was going to Bible studies. I was going to church. I was getting more familiar with who I was as a person and falling more in love with life and falling more in love with myself. And I was willing to just risk it all because of alcohol. That was never my intention. I never intended to get that drunk that night. I never intended to do drugs that night. But if I had one sip of alcohol, there was no stopping me. There was no determining what was going to happen. So at that point, I said, you know what? I've tried so many times to moderate this. I have tried to have a healthy relationship with this, and I just can't. I've proven to myself that I cannot. And my life is worth more than having alcohol in it. Even if right now alcohol feels like it's my whole identity, even if I don't know how I'm going to cope without it, I need to, because the alternative is losing my life. There are only so many times that God can save me when I'm putting myself in situations like that. I was so broken. I was so lost. And I knew God at that point. I had worked on myself. I had done so much. But one sip of alcohol turned me into a completely different person. So that was it. I decided I was done. So let's talk about early sobriety, because it was a whirlwind, let me tell you. I was still very isolated after COVID. I was living in Charlotte away from all of my good friends and family. Most of the friends that I had made in Charlotte had left Charlotte. So I felt very alone, honestly. And I am a massive introvert, and I've been hurt by a lot of relationships, and I just didn't really want to be around people, but I knew that I needed to be around people. In Charlotte, I was alone, and I loved and valued my alone time, but I knew that in order to stay sober, I had to get in community. So I started going to AA. To this day, I love AA's literature. I love their sayings. I love their teachings. I love everything about the program. I think it is so special and one of the coolest things that humans have ever brought into this world. It is something that I am so grateful that exists. I very much so believe that being in those rooms early on in sobriety kept me sober. Hearing these stories of people who were so much further gone than I was and have been sober for years and decades and still come and show up in these rooms was so inspiring to me. It was something that was like, okay, this sobriety thing, I think this is it. I think I want to do this. I really want this to mean something this time. I didn't go to too many meetings, but I took so much from it. The biggest thing there that I think AA has taught me is how important it is to give it to a higher power of your understanding. I am still not a religious person. I have a very deep relationship with God. I still go to church and I still read my Bible, but religion kind of turns me off in a lot of ways. And I think there are a lot of people like me. So being able to turn this God into a higher power of my own understanding gave me permission to not have to see things as so black and white. That's what made a relationship with God so personal to me, is because it wasn't about following all the rules or reading all the scriptures or doing all those things. It was about hitting my knees and praying to God and relying on Him and His strength to help me get through another day sober. And it really wasn't the alcohol that I was craving in those moments. It was just having an escape. It was not having to sit with my feelings and my emotions and ask myself the deeper questions. That was what alcohol prevented me from having to do. And I loved that. So now that I was sober and I didn't have alcohol, I had to find new ways to cope. And there were definitely times where I relied on food, where I relied on scrolling on social media, where I would overexercise as a form of control. And there were so many unhealthy ways that I approached it, but I stayed sober. And it wasn't easy, but I had made that decision. The word alcoholic, for some people, it triggers them because it's like, why would you want to hold on to an identity like that? To me, it's not a negative identity. To me, it's freeing. It's a label that helps me stay in my lane and remember how important my recovery is to me. I'm an alcoholic. I can't pick up another drink. I really can't. I can't have one sip because I don't know where it's going to lead me. I'm just an alcoholic who has decided not to ever allow myself to have that first sip, who has decided to rely on God to help me through these hard moments, who has decided to choose different ways of coping and has decided to actually do reflecting and get to know myself and get to know what's wrong with my brain and where I'm struggling. Learning AA's literature, reading the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, reading daily reflections, and genuinely praying every morning when I woke up, even when I felt like I had it under control. Hey God, what do you want me to do today? What ways am I living out of alignment with my values? It was that constant talking to God and relying on God's strength and not trying to do it all through my own power, because I had tried to do it all through my own power multiple times before, unsuccessfully, might I add. So it was the relying on God, it was being honest with myself, it was being willing to be uncomfortable, because being sober is uncomfortable. That is one thing I will tell you, that it's not the easiest way to live. It is not the most comfortable or the most fun even way to live. But I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that it is the best way to live. And if you're not an alcoholic and you can handle your alcohol, more power to you. This is zero judgment. But for me, I am a million, billion, bajillion times better off because I've decided to never take another drink of alcohol ever again. And so many people would ask questions like, oh, so at your wedding, you're not going to have champagne? No, I'm not. In fact, I didn't even have a wedding. I had a courthouse wedding and it was amazing. But not once have I felt like I'm missing out on life because I'm not drinking. Not once. Are there still moments where the desire creeps in? Kind of, in a way. Like if I'm in an environment where a bunch of people are drinking and they're making it look like it's fun, sometimes I want to feed into that because I want to feel on the same level as other people who are drinking, you know? But being sober for this long has proven to me time and time again that most people who are drinking don't end up having all that much fun. And the way that they remember it the next day is that they had a lot more fun than what they seemed to be having the night before. And I've witnessed it make people so mean and angry and do stupid things. I've witnessed myself doing those things. And it just, I have no desire to drink. I don't. I really don't. I still dance. I can still go to parties. I can still go to concerts. I went to Vegas completely sober and was raving at all of those pool parties, having the time of my life. Because I didn't stop being fun just because I wasn't drinking. I didn't take myself out of all those environments, except some people have to. Some people can't do those environments without alcohol. But for me, I didn't. I was like, cool, I'm just going to have to teach myself how to be fun and how to be unfiltered without the help of alcohol, without the social lubricant. So life is harder now. It's harder to do that. It is harder to network and to meet new people and to do all of these things without having alcohol as my social crutch. And I am a lot more isolated probably because of it. But a more isolated life without alcohol is better than a life that is fueled with alcohol and surrounded by people that I don't remember. So yeah, that is what the early days of sobriety were like. And to this day, I don't have a fear that I'm going to pick up a drink when I'm conscious. I still have relapse dreams all of the time. Like I would say at least once a month. Even now, 5 years later, I'll have a dream where I decided to pick up a drink and it always ends disastrously. And I feel like that's God just planting this seed in my head like, hey, don't forget you're an alcoholic. You should never pick up another drink, so that I don't ever get to the point where I'm like, you know what? It's been long enough. Maybe I should try again. No, that's a lie. That is the enemy lying to you. There's no way that I could know that that wasn't going to send my life into absolute utter chaos, because I genuinely believe it would. So let's talk about what being without alcohol has given me, because there's no way that I would be living the life that I'm living now if I hadn't given up alcohol 5 years ago. There's no way that I would have the marriage that I do. If I was drinking, I would start stupid fights, I would do stupid things, I would feel so much shame, and I just wouldn't view myself the same. There's no way that I could have this happy, healthy relationship. There's no way that I could be working the job that I am and creating this YouTube channel and feeling confident enough to put myself out there online, because I just wouldn't have felt that same love for myself. I would have known that I was doing something that I knew I shouldn't be doing. And I genuinely love who I am today. I really do. I have gotten so close with God. I have really learned what my values are. I have become a person who is courageous in taking chances and chasing my dreams. I am self-assured and confident. I live my life to the fullest and I romanticize it. And I am constantly bettering myself, but not from a place of lack, but from a place of I want to get the most out of this life that I possibly can. I want to experience life and joy and all of these things to the fullest. And you can't do that if you're not sober. If you are drinking or doing drugs or any of these things, you're not experiencing life to the fullest. You are dampening your experience of the world. I am a different person because I have quit alcohol. And I am so grateful that I am. And I know that most of this video focused on the journey that it took to get me here and less about where I am now and all the things that sobriety has given me. So let me know if you want that to be another video. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm an open book. This is me celebrating 5 years without alcohol. And here's to many, many more. See you in the next one. Until next time, I hope you have the very best day ever.